Hate is the worst poison of all, because it blinds. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler review of Kate Elliott's The Burning Stone. The Burning Stone is a 1999 novel and book 3 in the Crown of Stars series. I've previously reviewed book 1, King's Dragon, and book 2, Prince of Dogs. This one starts with a priest of the Lord and Lady being dehumanized as a slave of the Cuman. In particular, they find the priest womanish, and so treat him as one, including emasculation. This is Zacharias. His situation is grim and brutal. Be warned. I believe this is about 2 years since the start of book 1. So Zacharias, though he witnesses an otherworldly fight, the Lost Ones are not completely separate from events of the world this time around. The Burning Stone immediately comes into play in the story. The story proper begins with Elliott, who graces the cover of this book, I think. She finds herself in an unfamiliar place. I'm very happy with the pacing at the start here. Stuff happens on page 1, while on something like Wheel of Time, you have to wait until the end of the book for something to happen, and by the time it does, it's almost anticlimactic. But I'm just digging there. She is a loyal eagle to the king and in love with Sanglant, who is, well, everyone now lives, having survived the Ica and Ghent. Speaking of, Fifth Son must vie for his position amongst Ica. He wants the vacancy that, is open because Bloodheart is dead. Then Elaine comes on, hunting with his new father, Count Lavestine. Sanglant likes him, Sapienta does not. The former is more likable and hopefully will inherit Henry's crown, but he seems less likely because he's a bastard, and one from a male, alright, the female being preferred here, and only half human at that. Elaine himself worries about his war fame and his marriage to a woman recently from a convent, Talia. She's a heretic, kind of like Aggius. The cast of characters expands too. Baldwin gets some attention, a young man once pledged to the church but now married to Judith for political reasons. Zacharias, of course, and then the returning cast. I like the explanations of megaliths here, as medieval Europeans would be confused about the stone circles and tumuli of the Neolithic period. I also appreciate the great religious concern. Sure, some of it is, just use for power and unrighteousness, right? Because people are power hungry. But most are concerned with finding the right teachings of, God or deity here. Well, maybe this resonates less with the more a religious contemporary audience. It's pretty poignant for most of human history. And there are still arcs involving questioning of faith and falling into wickedness. There is sex in this one. I don't want to say not rape like before. There is definitely sex, so it is not rape. It's more explicit because of that. Not terribly so, though. Well, there is some rape, though, and lots of fear of rape. And every man, and even many men in odd sexual situations, lust or its demarcation, particularly in religious context, is important to the story. There are some great relationships in politics overall. There are some things that's not very likable about this, though. And the dogs, of course, they're still loyal and powerful and terrifying, and by the Lord and Lady, damnable and beautiful on the outside, but rotten on the inside. Hugh is still persistent after Eliath, which is annoying as hell. There's great medieval eschisms, as before, like quince being used in cooking, the idea of humors, the Kenning battle glory, the Wheel of Fortune. A small remark on women being more rational than men was great. Same with the neutral he actually being replaced by a gender-neutral she in places. Also, the constellation in relation to magic is very authentic and beats hard magic these days. And I wish Judith was of the Holofernes variety, but she's not. I also like how truly epic it is, though. It takes a long time rather than seeing things happening within a few days of weeks, right? So this is a story that takes place over a long period of time, that's what I should say. This takes years, right? People get pregnant and have children during the story rather than, at the very end, because everything's happy now, right? There's lots of personal conflict and development. Politics takes some time to get into more of the fighting, though. We do get happenings outside of Windar and Var as well in this one. Now, Leoth and Elaine have quite the story arcs here. My biggest complaint is kind of the length. It's too long, and so I enjoyed it less than the first two. This is a common epic fantasy problem. It also does the typical battle at the end thing, but doesn't make up for the slow plod the story becomes over its vast length, even though it does start really well. What it doesn't do, like much epic fantasy, is feel like this. It starts small until building up to the end of the world. This just feels like the story has some polities and characters within them. Maybe we'll get to the end of the world scenario, I mean, right? There's 4 more books, or this world at least, but it's not rising exponentially in conflict like Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time. As much as I love Lord of the Rings, a lot of the other ones just do it because they're copying that. Though the world does get larger and conflicts ensue. Also, much of the magic is of the evil sword and sorcery variety, so that's kind of cool, I guess. But rather than Sibella or the Aika, the threat are the Kuman for the most part, and this involves the great political landscape of the continent as a whole, and not just these 2 countries. This is the end, actually, what was supposed to be a trilogy. But the series grew, as you sometimes hear about, these sick and bloated epic fantasy series growing beyond what they should. I think people think it's a feature rather than a symptom, but I digress. I am looking forward to book 4. I'm just a little afraid it'll be as bloated as this one was. But overall, it still was not a bad read. Anyways, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.